He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't a band member, a manager, or even a roadie. But on one cold California night in 1977, a quiet man lingered in the shadows backstage, introduced simply as a roadie's Portuguese cousin. No one thought much of it. Journey was still a band in transition then. Talented, yes, but lost. Their shows drew modest crowds, their albums respectable sales. Yet something was missing. They had the fire, the musicianship, but not the voice. So when this soft-spoken stranger appeared backstage, no one imagined he would be the missing piece, because behind that shy smile and the nervous glance was Steve Perry, the man who would one day make millions sing along to Don't Stop Believin'. But that night, he was living a lie, a calculated, careful, necessary lie. Journey's management had made a desperate decision. They wanted Perry, but the band didn't. The members were fiercely protective of their sound. Jazz fusion, experimental, raw. They had already been burned by lineup changes and didn't want another outsider, especially one the label was pushing. So their manager, Herbie Herbert, came up with a plan. Sneak Perry in quietly. Let him blend in. Let them hear him before they see him. So that night, as amplifiers buzzed and guitars screamed, Perry stood by, pretending to carry cables, pretending to be invisible, the roadie's Portuguese cousin. He was terrified. He knew that one wrong move, one misplaced word, and the lie would crumble before it ever began. But Herbie's gamble was simple. If the band could hear Perry's voice without their prejudices, they might finally understand. The only problem was, Perry wasn't supposed to sing that night. He was supposed to observe, watch, learn, and wait. And yet, destiny doesn't wait. Later that week, in a small rehearsal room thick with cigarette smoke, Perry was quietly handed a microphone. No spotlight, no crowd, just a few skeptical bandmates, their arms crossed, their faces unreadable. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and began to sing. The room changed instantly. Neil Sean's head lifted. Greg Rowley looked up from his keys. The sound, that unmistakable tone, soaring yet fragile, filled the space like something sacred. Herbie Herbert watched in silence. He knew it, this was the voice that could save Journey. But not everyone felt the same. As soon as the last note faded, a tension cut through the air. "This isn't us," one member muttered. "He's too pop," said another. The lie had bought Perry a moment, but not acceptance. He was still the outsider, still the cousin who didn't belong. And yet in that fragile moment, Steve Perry realized something that would define his career. If the truth wouldn't open the door, the music would. From that day on, he rehearsed like a ghost, always there, rarely acknowledged. He studied the band's rhythms, their chemistry, their habits. He tried to blend in, to earn their trust one note at a time. But every night, when he sang alone in his motel room, he wondered how long he could keep pretending, because eventually, someone would ask the question he couldn't answer. Who is this guy really? And when they did, everything would unravel. The band, the plan, the dream, all of it. The Portuguese cousin cover story was supposed to last a few days, maybe a week, but it went on longer. Each rehearsal, each performance, the line between lie and truth blurred a little more. Until one night, a band member walked in unexpectedly and caught Perry singing into a live mic, the song that would change everything. And in that moment, the lie could no longer hide the truth. It happened by accident. At least that's how Steve Perry remembered it. Late one evening, after hours of silent rehearsals and forced smiles, he thought he was alone. The band had left, the amps were still humming, and for once he could finally let go. He picked up a mic and began to sing, not a Journey song, but something personal, something raw, something he'd written long before any of this. "If you need me, call me."
If you need me, call me. I'll be there.
His voice floated through the empty room, soft at first, then stronger, fuller, heartbreakingly beautiful. It echoed down the hall, carrying every ounce of emotion he'd been forced to hide. And that's when the door opened. Neil Sean stood there, frozen. He hadn't meant to come back. He'd left his guitar cable behind. But what he heard in that moment stopped him cold. For a second, neither spoke. Perry, still holding the mic, looked terrified. The secret was out, but instead of anger, Sean just said quietly, "Do that again." So Perry did. He sang like it was his last chance to prove he belonged, every note pure, aching, undeniable. When the final line faded, there was only silence. Then Sean smiled, a small one. "That's the sound," he said. "That's the one we've been missing." It was the first crack in the wall. Herbie Herbert's gamble was working. Soon, word spread within the band. The roadie's cousin wasn't a roadie at all. He was the singer they'd been resisting, and his voice wasn't just good, it was otherworldly. But with revelation came resentment. Greg Rowley, the band's original vocalist, felt betrayed. They'd been sneaking someone behind his back, letting him sing, watching him rehearse, knowing full well what that meant, replacing him. It wasn't just a matter of pride, it was personal. Journey had been built from the ashes of Santana and Frumious Bandersnatch. They prided themselves on musicianship, not showmanship. Perry represented everything they thought they weren't. To them, he was a pop singer with a soft smile and radio dreams, not the fusion warrior they wanted. Still, there was no denying what everyone felt the first time he sang with the full band. When Perry's voice cut through the guitar solos and drum fills, something electric happened. For the first time, Journey didn't just sound good, they sounded timeless. That rehearsal marked the birth of a new Journey, but also the beginning of a quiet war within it. Behind closed doors, arguments broke out. Herbie insisted the label needed Perry, that his voice could finally bring the band to radio. Rowley pushed back, warning they'd lose their identity. Neil Schon, caught in the middle, just listened. He knew what that voice could do, but he also knew what it would cost. Meanwhile, Perry stayed silent. He practiced harder, spoke less, and poured every ounce of insecurity into his vocals. Every note was a plea to belong, every lyric a confession of the outsider he still was. Then came the moment of truth. Herbie booked a secret showcase, a small club in San Francisco, with industry scouts hidden in the crowd. It would be Perry's first performance with Journey, and the first time fans would see the man behind the mysterious cousin. Backstage, the tension was unbearable. Some bandmates wouldn't even make eye contact. But when the lights dimmed and Perry stepped to the mic, something shifted. He didn't just sing, he owned it. From the opening line, the crowd leaned in. His voice had that haunting mix of purity and power, a sound that could make even the loudest room fall silent. When the set ended, there was no applause at first, just stunned faces, then a roar that shook the walls. Journey had found their new voice, but not everyone was cheering. After the show, one band member slammed his guitar case shut and muttered, "This isn't the band I signed up for." The lie had brought Steve Perry into Journey, but the truth, that they needed him, was something some of them couldn't accept. And as their fame began to rise, so did the cracks beneath the surface. Because for every note Steve Perry sang that night, another wall inside the band began to crumble. The cheers were deafening that night, but behind the curtain, the silence was louder. Steve Perry had just won the crowd, but lost half the band. For some, his voice was salvation. For others, it was the end of everything they had built. Journey had started as a musician's band, complex rhythms, jazz fusion roots, songs that defied radio play. Now suddenly they had a frontman who could make teenage girls scream, a frontman who sang about love, heartbreak, and hope. The label saw dollar signs. The band saw a stranger taking over their home. But once the audience had heard that voice, there was no going back. Journey's new era had begun, and the Portuguese cousin was now their star. Herbie Herbert knew it, the band knew it, and soon so would the world. In 1978, Journey released Infinity, their first album with Steve Perry. The difference was immediate. The raw experimentation of their early records gave way to soaring melodies, unforgettable choruses, and an emotional core that only Perry could deliver. Songs like Lights and Wheel in the Sky gave the band something they'd never had before: identity. And as the singles climbed the charts, the crowds began to change. The arenas grew larger, the fans grew louder, and Journey, once a cult musician's secret, became a household name. But with every sold-out show, the tension behind the scenes grew worse. Greg Rowley, who had once been the band's spiritual core, felt himself fading into the background. Perry's voice was now the centerpiece, his emotion, his image, his story, and it didn't help that the label kept calling him the future of Journey. Backstage, arguments turned into silence, rehearsals turned into battles of control. Even the music, the one thing that united them, started to feel like a war zone. Steve Perry tried to stay humble. He was grateful, overwhelmed, and often lonely. He knew what it felt like to be on the outside, and he could sense that some of his bandmates still saw him that way. No matter how many fans screamed his name, In interviews, he smiled. On stage, he poured his soul out. But privately, he wondered if the lie that brought him here had also cursed him. Because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't supposed to be there. And the more famous Journey became, the more isolated he felt. By 1980, Journey was selling out stadiums, but inside the band, everything was splintering. Roadie was exhausted, Sean was torn between loyalty and ambition, and Perry, the voice everyone adored, had become both their greatest gift and their greatest burden. When Escape dropped in 1981, everything exploded. Open Arms, Who's Crying Now, and the anthem that would outlive them all, Don't Stop Believing. It was the ultimate victory, but it came at a price. Because for every fan who fell in love with Steve Perry's voice, there was a critic or a bandmate who whispered that Journey had sold out, that the band who once played for the art had now become a machine built for radio, and those whispers slowly turned into resentment. Roadie left the band, unable to keep pretending he still believed. Jonathan Cain joined, bringing fresh melodies and radio hits, the exact thing Journey's early members had feared. The band was evolving, but the heart that started it all was breaking apart. Perry, meanwhile, was living every musician's dream: fame, success, adoration, yet none of it felt real. He could hear the tension in every rehearsal, see it in the looks exchanged across the stage, and deep down, he knew the truth. It all started with a lie. A necessary one. A lie that brought him into Journey, and one that now haunted him every single night. Because no matter how loud the applause got, Perry couldn't silence the question that still lingered. If they had known the truth from the start, would they ever have let me in? And as Journey reached their peak, millions of albums sold, thousands of screaming fans, that question became impossible to ignore. Because the same lie that built the band's greatest triumph was about to tear it apart. By 1982, the world had fallen in love with Steve Perry. The man who once stood backstage, pretending to be a roadie's Portuguese cousin, was now the most recognizable voice in rock. It was poetic in a way. The man who had to lie just to be heard now couldn't walk down a street without being recognized. The lie had worked too well. Journey was everywhere. Their songs filled stadiums, movie soundtracks, wedding dances, even high school gyms. The world didn't just listen to Steve Perry. They felt him, because when he sang, it wasn't just music, it was a confession. Every lyric, every note, carried the same ache that had followed him from that first secret audition: the longing to belong, the need to be accepted, the unshakable fear that maybe he never truly was. But while the world celebrated Journey's meteoric rise behind closed doors, the band was slowly fracturing. The deception that started it all, the cousin cover story, had never really disappeared. It lingered in rehearsals, in studio sessions, in the quiet tension that no one dared to speak aloud. To the public, they were brothers. But inside, something was broken. Herbie Herbert, Journey's sharp, protective manager, could see it. He'd been the mastermind of that original plan, the one who smuggled Perry into rehearsals under false pretenses. He'd done it to save the band, to give them a future. But now, years later, he couldn't ignore what it had cost them. Because yes, Journey had the success, they had the hits, but they'd lost the unity that once made them fearless. Some bandmates still couldn't let go of the resentment. To them, Perry had always been the outsider, the corporate pick, the label's golden boy who changed the sound and stole the spotlight. They respected his talent, but trust was something else entirely, and Perry felt it. Every day, he carried it like a ghost. He'd walk into rehearsals with his coffee, crack a few quiet jokes and smile, but he could sense the distance, invisible but heavy. He'd hear whispers when he left the room, and worse, sometimes he'd hear silence when he entered it. It's strange how success can feel so lonely, how the dream you once begged for can slowly start to feel like a cage. On stage, he was electric, moving crowds to tears, filling arenas with emotion, but the moment he walked off, the applause faded too quickly, and the silence afterward, it hurt more than any critic's words. Still, the hits kept coming. Escape shattered expectations, selling millions. Then Frontiers arrived, giving the world separate ways, faithfully, and another chapter in the legend. To fans, Journey looked unstoppable, but to those inside it, they were burning out. Herbie once described it best: "We were kings, but we were all exhausted from the crown." By the mid-1980s, the tension reached a breaking point. Perry had become more than just a singer. He was now the band's creative engine. He poured his heart into Raised on Radio, an album shaped by both triumph and tragedy. During its recording, Perry's mother fell gravely ill. He would rush from the hospital to the studio, his emotions raw and unguarded. The songs reflected it, softer, more soulful, deeply personal, but that shift in tone caused another split. Some bandmates wanted to keep the old Journey alive, the rock-driven, guitar-heavy sound, but Perry wanted something deeper, something honest. He wanted music that reflected who he'd become, and when artistic vision clashes with pride, it rarely ends well. One by one, original members began to leave, or were let go. Herbie tried to hold the ship together, but even he could feel the strain between Perry and the rest of the band. The family they'd built on stage was unraveling off it. The irony was painful. The man who once pretended to belong now stood at the very center of everything, yet he'd never felt more alone. When Raised on Radio finally released in 1986, it was a hit, another platinum success, but the price was devastating. The Journey that had once stormed the charts together was gone, and deep down, Perry knew it. After the tour ended, he withdrew. He stopped returning calls, stopped showing up to rehearsals. For the first time, he allowed himself to wonder, was it all worth it? The fame, the money, the spotlight, all built on a lie told nearly a decade ago. A lie meant to open a door, not build a fortress around him, and so he walked away. No farewell concert, no final note, just silence. The world didn't understand. Fans begged for answers, but Perry never gave one. He simply disappeared, leaving behind an echo that would never fade. For years, Journey tried to move on. New singers came and went, each compared to the voice that defined an era, but no one ever truly replaced him, because Steve Perry wasn't just a voice. He was the voice, the emotional core that made every lyric feel like it came from your own heart. Years later, when he finally resurfaced, older, wiser, and quieter, he spoke about those early days with a bittersweet calm. He didn't deny the deception. He didn't excuse it either. He simply said, it was the only way they'd ever hear me. Once they did, everything changed. And maybe that's the real truth of it all. The lie that snuck him into Journey wasn't malicious. It wasn't greed. It was faith. Faith that if people could just hear his voice without judgment, without labels, they'd understand what he had to give. And they did. That small act of defiance, that little cover story whispered backstage, didn't just change a band, it changed rock history, because from that moment on, Steve Perry wasn't just another singer, he became the soul of a generation. His voice carried love, pain, hope, and heartbreak into millions of lives. He reminded the world that truth doesn't always come wrapped in honesty. Sometimes it hides behind a lie, waiting for the right moment to be heard, and that's what made him timeless. When Don't Stop Believin' plays today, it's not just nostalgia, it's history. It's a reminder that one small lie, told for the right reason, can change everything. Because if Steve Perry hadn't walked into that room pretending to be someone else, Journey might never have become the band we know. And the world might never have heard the voice that would define an entire generation. In the end, it wasn't the lie that changed rock forever, it was the truth inside it. A truth that still echoes, decades later, in every heart that sings along.